Well, this morning, former President Trump's legal team is facing a new deadline after the 11th U.S. Circuit Court halted a third-party review of documents seized from his Mar-a-Lago home. The court gave Trump's team 7 days to respond.
Yeah, we'll see if this speeds up the overall case investigation. CNN senior legal affairs correspondent Paula Reed joins us now. So this, when you go back to this, it really is a rebuke of U.S. District Judge Aileen Cannon's order appointing this special mouse master, attracted all that attention a number of weeks ago. So what does it mean for the broader investigation of the documents?
It's a big win for the newly appointed special counsel, Jack Smith, because this removes an obstacle to one of his key investigations. I mean, here, the so-called special master, this was a third party who was appointed to go through the thousands of documents that were retrieved from Mar-a-Lago and determine what, if anything, was privileged and needed to be kept from investigators. Well, that process slows down the entire investigation. And we had a pretty good idea that this wasn't going to go well for the former president based on the oral arguments. I was down there in Atlanta, and sometimes, Jim, it's hard to tell which way a panel is leaning. But these were 3 GOP-appointed judges, 2 appointed by Trump himself. And it was clear from the questions they were asking that they were concerned about the idea that someone could just come in and interfere with an investigation like this, especially in a case where a warrant has not been found to be invalid. Now, it'll be interesting to see, now that they have struck out with these 3 judges, if Trump's legal team decides to appeal, because I think most legal experts say it's unlikely that they would ultimately prevail. But as we know, the former president has very effectively used delay as a strategy. An appeal would at least give him more time.
Even if he expects to lose time, he might have calculators on his side. The other development is now the testimony from former White House counsel Pat Cipollone and Deputy Patrick Philbin. They're going to have to testify.
Exactly. We know in addition to using delay, stonewalling is another technique he has used for decades. And in the context of these investigations, he has tried to very liberally and creatively apply some of his privileges, be it attorney-client privilege or executive privilege. Now, these 2 former White House lawyers, they had previously testified before the grand jury, but there were some questions they wouldn't answer, citing privilege. But now a judge has thrown that out, that we do expect that will be appealed. And look, it was a bad day for the former president in court. But as we've seen over the past few years, he can have some bad days, right? But in the long arc of these investigations, things still tend to fall his way. But he's no longer president. And even former Trump officials will tell you that the facts, particularly in the Mar-a-Lago investigation, are concerning for his legal team.
And as you note, in a lot of these cases, Trump appointed judges who are deciding against him.
Exactly.
Paula Reed, thanks so much. Joining us now to discuss, former federal prosecutor Elliot Williams and Kirsten Powers, columnist for USA Today. Elliot, lots of developments as always in the legal sphere here. I do want to drill down on this one about Pat Cipollone and Patrick Philbin now having to testify, the court rejecting Trump's arguments, really just a broad executive privilege and attorney-client privilege claim there. These guys know what the president told him in those crucial moments during the attempts to overturn the election. How crucial, how impactful do you think their testimony might be?
I think very, Jim, as former lawyers and senior White House staffers, these 2 individuals are entitled to lots of privileges potentially based on their relationship and the jobs they had, right? And so certainly there was an open question as to whether any statements that they would have made would have been protected. Look, courts looked at it and said that you can't just have a blanket privilege merely by having worked in the White House. By virtue of those jobs, exactly as your question asked, Jim, they would have been privy to any number of very sensitive matters that could be quite useful to this investigation. So certainly you don't get the sense that if these 2 do come in that they'll stonewall or be quite difficult as witnesses. But there's no way to sugarcoat it. They're very consequential folks.
So, Kirsten, this decision coupled with the 11th Circuit Court's decision to halt the special master reviewing those documents and rebuking that federal judge Aileen Cannon, definitely a legal setback, to say the least, for the former president. That having been said, what does it mean for him politically in terms of his bid for re-election?
You know, I tend to think that these things are, first of all, kind of baked in. At this point, if you aren't aware of what the president has done in terms of January 6th, the former president in terms of January 6th, in terms of taking these documents, you know, I guess you're not following the news at all. And so it's probably baked in for his very, very core supporters. You know, the question is, how does it affect people who are more in the middle, who, you know, aren't that enthusiastic about him in the first place? It's just another thing against him. But like I said, they already know that this is happening. And to a certain extent, for people who really like Donald Trump, he can actually use this to his benefit because it's like it's his whole shtick, right? That he's always being persecuted and that he's always being mistreated, and that's, you know, sort of part of his constant story. I mean, he's just sent a video to a group of people who were January 6th rioters who are claiming they're being persecuted by the legal system. Mm-hmm. So we can see very much where he's aligning himself, and he's continuing with this kind of grievance politics.
Elliot, the other development, of course, the January 6th committee meeting today, whether to make criminal referrals, and they got a couple categories here to decide on. One, on the 5 Republican lawmakers who've refused to cooperate with their subpoenas. That, by the way, includes the possible future Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, but also criminal referral of Trump. I mean, the DOJ's got its own investigation underway right now. It's going to make its own decision. Is a January 6th committee criminal referral, does that carry weight?
No, it doesn't. Look, there two things can be true, Jim. Number one, it's a very powerful, important, symbolic step for Congress to make a criminal referral of somebody they think has committed a law, broken the law, but also that it just doesn't matter to the Justice Department. Legally, it is a step that the Justice Department doesn't have to rely on. And look, think of it this way. Our country takes actions all the time that are symbolic but very important. Think about every inauguration. Nothing in the Constitution says there has to be a big party on the steps of the Capitol with all of the former presidents and members of Congress, but it's an important symbol that people around the world see. It's sort of the same thing, and this would be issuing criminal referrals would be Congress flexing its muscles as a co-equal branch of government. But at the end of the day, the Justice Department does not need to consider it, and as you've seen already, they've already charged folks without referrals from Congress. So we'll see what they do today.
So, Kirsten, this comes as we're expecting by the end of the year to get the January 6th committee's final report. There's been a bit of inside politics and grievances internally playing out the last few weeks. Overall, though, they have been pretty much in lockstep in this bipartisan committee, we should note. What are you looking for to stand out, and what will you be watching the most in this final report?
Well, I mean, what's happening is basically you have Liz Cheney very much driving the idea that this should be completely focused on Donald Trump, right? Almost like a legal brief. And then you have other people who are saying we need to focus on Donald Trump, but we also need to focus on in the future. You know, how are we going to the things that are happening that, you know, could potentially cause this to happen again in the future, like talking about militia or dark money or things like that. And so that has to be kind of reconciled. But one of the problems for them is that they have this deadline hanging over them. They have to get it done because the Republicans are about to take over Congress and they're going to lose their funding. So there's not a lot of time to really be hashing this out. And I guess if I had to put my money on somebody, it's probably Liz Cheney. But yeah, it will be interesting to see whether or not this is something that is just really focused on making the case against Donald Trump, or if it's a broader a broader report that's taking a more holistic look at the problem.
And of course, Kevin McCarthy has already promised that once they take control, the Republicans take control of the House, that they will launch an investigation into the January 6th committee's investigation. Right. So politics as usual there. Elliot Williams, Kirsten Powers, thank you.